So, The Boys is finally over, and I just gotta say,
we're free. We're finally free.
Now back in the day, I was a boys lover.
What do you mean by that?
I was a The Boys lover. This was once a favorite show of mine. I'd feel confident saying season 1 and 2 are almost perfect seasons. The show is pretty ugly and the action is pretty bad, but the action has never really been the focus of this show. Its strength early on was in its story and characters. Every character felt like a real person with their own goals and motivations. Even secondary characters like A-Train and the Deep, who were never super vital to the main plot, would still get a lot of depth to who they were, and it made the show feel much more real and engaging because of it. The show also had some solid satire. It mocked real-world figures and events in a way that was very funny and maybe caused just a little bit of existential dread. It put a superhero spin on real-world issues like politics and religion in ways that felt very natural and realistic to that world and more relatable to our real world than I care to think about. It made fun of the oversaturation of superhero media and things like the MCU with their own parody VCU. Good thing that never backfired on them. More on that later though. Seasons 1 and 2 are both really good. They've got fun to follow characters with relevant satire that adds to the story they were trying to tell. 9 out of 10. Now season 3 is also really good, but I think it marks the beginning of the show's biggest problem moving forward. Homelander. Now I'm not saying Homelander is a bad character, quite the opposite actually. Homelander is easily the best character in the entire show, and Anthony Starr's commitment and the ever-escalating insane shit Homelander is willing to do just because he knows he can get away with it is some of the most entertaining parts of the entire series. But I think they realized they struck gold with this character a little too hard, because season 3 marks a shift in how much of the show puts all of its eggs in the Homelander milk bottle. Starting with this season, the show was no longer The Boys, it was The Homelander Show, featuring The Boys. Other characters started getting sidelined in favor of giving more screen time to Homelander, and I like Homelander, but I also like Huey and A-Train, and the show started getting less and less about the ensemble and more about Trump in a cave over here. And speaking of, this was also the season where the satire took a turn for the worse. Homelander was always seen as a parody of Trump, but this season it stopped being as subtle or clever in that messaging, and I think the writing took a bit of a hit because of it. This is still a solid season, but I think this is when the cracks are starting to show. 8 out of 10. Season 4 fucking sucks. This was a season that began what I've coined the South Parkification of The Boys. You see, South Park is famous for making entire episodes of the show in 1 week, which allows them to stay topical and comment on current events. This makes episodes really relevant in the moment, but in a few years when people have moved on from whatever topic they're covering, the episode loses that punch that makes those early seasons so special. And this is exactly what happened starting in season 4 of The Boys. The show lost any sense of plot progression just to start pointing at things and going, "You guys get it? This thing is like that thing in real life. Isn't that hilarious?" Any sense of subtlety is gone. Characters stagnate, plots grind to a halt in favor of surface level satire. Can you name one thing Huey does in season 4? He was the main character in season 1, and now he's just standing around doing the Roblox smirk every episode. Remember when Jeffrey Dean Morgan was in this season? His character ultimately goes nowhere and feels like such a waste of time. If I can give any props to this season, I do think Firecracker is a solid addition. Her rivalry with Starlight makes for a nice rivalry as Homelander gets further separated from the storyline of the main boys. I also think A-Train's redemption arc is handled pretty well, and it feels like a pretty natural turning point for his characters. It's not all bad, it's just mostly bad. 5 out of 10. And why not? Let's talk about it. Gen V sucks. This spinoff is lifeless, dull, boring, other synonym. The characters aren't interesting. They're all the same. They speak in quips, curse like they're 6-year-olds who just learned what the word fuck is and want to sound cool. And it just does not feel like a story worth telling. The Boys was a show built up on parodying and making fun of the oversaturation of superhero media, and now it has its own dead spinoff, a prequel show being set up, and The Boys Mexico. I don't give a shit about The Boys Mexico. Can we give a proper conclusion to the show I actually signed up to watch? 4 out of 10, this show sucks, but I like Marie's powers, they're pretty cool, and also Emma is so pretty. Hey, if you're enjoying the review, consider subscribing to hear whatever I yap about next. So, we made it. Season 5. This show flew off the rails in season 4, and its spinoff is just a parody of itself, but I was still holding out hope that this season would be good. So did it pull it off?
Hear me and hear me good. I'm here to double down. That shit is a 2-pack of ass.
Where do I even begin? For starters, the dialogue has reached an all-time low. Now, I don't think I'm breaking any new ground by saying that this show is edgy. The show has always had its fair share of shits and fucks and dicks and butts. Now, I'm no Catholic child of God, so I don't really care. Something can be edgy and I'm not going to be up in arms about it. But the overly edgy writing is just so poorly done this season. Kimiko talks now, something that she learned to do off-screen, by the way. And her dialogue is just the worst.
I know all about it.
Suck my fat dick.
Soulja Boy is the exact same way. Half of his lines are just naming a celebrity from the 70s he's had sex with and how much hair they had down there. It's the same joke every time. It never evolves and it gets stale by the third time, let alone the 30th. The show has lost any interest in actually telling a satisfying story. That plot point we've been developing since the very first season about a recording of Homelander letting an entire plane die? Just expose it and say it's AI. Who cares? Gotta make room for more scenes of characters standing in empty rooms talking. Was this really all this plotline was building up to? Just brushing off the series defining moment as something you'd see alongside Will Smith eating spaghetti? Was this your master plan all along, Eric Kripke? Eric Kripke? Eric Kripke? Eric Kripke? Eric Kripke? Now, if I can say one nice thing about this season, it's that there are at least stakes in the characters now. I obviously won't spoil anything specific, but a lot of characters who we've come to know over the years are put in actual life-threatening danger this season. I was genuinely unsure who would make it out of certain episodes alive. Seasons past, I've lost interest because characters felt almost invincible. Not you. There was no sense of stakes because characters got out of pretty much any situation without a scratch. So it's nice to finally be able to actually watch with some tension in who will live or die. The problem is that a few of these deaths are not handled in a satisfying way. This does vary by death. I think the ends of some of these characters are actually handled pretty well, with send-offs that feel very fitting to the characters, but then some just feel very unceremonious and more like shock value than anything. I also have no sense of power scaling anymore. Homelander is supposedly the most powerful guy ever, and yet he gets knocked fully unconscious in an episode by some guy's stinky breath. Like, really? We've been trying to find something to do about this guy for 5 seasons, and all it took was eating some garlic bread.
Oh my fucking god, she fucking dead.
I can't get engaged with the story when I can't even get an idea of how powerful characters are in relation to each other. It's all just so inconsistent. Also, why are the boys on the run from the entire world that's under Homelander's thumb, and yet they continuously are able to sneak into vault facilities with just no trouble at all? Guys, you can't just wear baseball hats and have your entire look change. That's just not how that works.
It's not a disguise, Hank. We look like ourselves at a baseball game.
There's also an insane lack of plot progression going on. This is the final season of this show ever, and yet half of the episodes have the exact same plot without any build-up for a finale that it needs. Half of the season's structure is just Homelander wanting to be a god, meanwhile the boys go to a place to get something, before something goes wrong and they have to try again next week. They do it in this episode, and this episode, and this episode, and this episode. Do the writers have one plot line that they know how to write? Because that's what it feels like to me. When I got to the end of the second to last episode of the entire series, I was just so unsatisfied. This was the second to last episode ever, and it just does not feel like it at all. This felt like another standard mid-season side quest episode without any larger changes in the status quo. You have one episode left after this, and you're spending this one having 2 characters we don't even know sniff each other's asses like dogs. This show was built up on its stellar character work, with everyone being unique from each other with their own goals and ideals, but the season doesn't give most of them anything to do. Starlight spends all season as dead weight. She's the most powerful member of the boys, and she's relegated to just standing around and talking about the stuff going on for viewers who are half watching the show because they're scrolling Twitter half the time. Sister Sage just stands around using an iPad and sitting on a couch the entire season. Soulja Boy adds nothing to the plot besides telling us the people he's had sex with before getting written out of the story entirely. They brought him back for no reason. He adds nothing to the plot other than to set up a spin-off that I'm never going to watch. Ryan. Well, I'll be honest, I forgot he was even in the season until he shows up at the end. They bring back Gen V characters in this season to immediately say, no, you guys suck actually, you can't help. And then they leave. What? We had 2 seasons of the spinoff, and that's what it amounts to? Fuck this, I'm taking a point off Gen V. Fuck you, Eric Kripke. 3 out of 10. Now, when I got to the final episode of this entire series, I was at my low point. I had zero faith that after 7 hours of meandering, the show would not be able to wrap up in a satisfying way with only 1 hour to go. And I gotta say,
I liked it. Hell, I loved it.
Okay, maybe not loved, but I did actually kind of like this. The final episode is actually pretty good. It's not perfect. The opening scene of the last episode ever is a 3-minute scene of poop jokes. I'm not kidding. But once it actually does get going onto the final push, it is solid. Every character gets their moment to shine. The wrap up here is actually pretty good. There are fitting endings for pretty much every character remaining here. I'd say the first 20 minutes kinda suck, but once it gets to the real meat, it does work surprisingly well. I can tell they went into the season with a clear ending in mind. The problem is the path that they took to reach the ending is still not good. I do think this is a satisfying ending, but that doesn't make the rest of the season any better. There was like 40 minutes of story this entire season that I thought worked for sure. Did we really need 7 more hours to get there? I just don't agree. This season overall is just a mess. I think I almost would have just preferred if this was one 2.5 hour movie. There's no substance to the season, it's just a vessel to get to a pretty solid ending point. Before the finale, I was ready to give the season a pretty bad score, and is still getting one. The season has a pretty solid first 2 episodes, then slowly trudges along in the middle chunk before reigniting the flames for the finale. If I was just rating the ending here, I'd be happy to give this season like an 8, but I gotta rate the whole picture. Sorry guys. So I'll give the final season of The Boys a 5 out of 10.
Goo goo gaga. I want milk.